Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Playful Humans podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and my guest this week is Bonnie Garvin from Storytelling Lab. Storytellinglab.online is the website. We're going to hear all about the stories that Bonnie has created and helped other people create. That includes television, movies in the UK and in the United States, and let's see, on Showtime, Lifetime, all kinds of cool stuff. And she teaches at USC in the School of Cinema Arts. So we're going to learn all about that and more here on the Playful Humans podcast. Here we go. All right, Bonnie, here we go.
Okay.
We like to start with the joke of the week. The joke of the week this week is brought to you by origami. I got an A on my origami assignment because I turned my paper into my teacher. Okay, here's the official joke of the week. How many stormtroopers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They're all on the dark side. All right. Do you have a joke for us?
Do I have a joke for us? Oh my God, mine is so much longer. Really longer. And
I'm here for it. Let's go.
Sexual innuendo. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Like that? Okay.
It's play for adults.
So this man goes to the doctor, and the doctor says to him, I have really bad news for you. You have this terminal illness, and you've got basically 24 hours. So you need to kind of go home and wrap it up. Okay. He goes home and his wife is sleeping, and he said, she's taking a nap. He said, you've got to get up. I've got the worst news, and this is it for me. And, I really want to make love before I die. So they have sex. Wake up. He says, let's do it one more time, please. And she says, fine. And they do it again. And then he wakes her up again. He goes, just come on one more time. It's getting close to the end. And she says, no, she says, it's fine for you because you don't have to get up in the morning.
Nice. That's a good
one. Blew it. It wasn't. I have a better one, but I can't remember it. We'll just move on, I think.
I have a similar one, but I'll have to tell you after we record. I'm not sure I can quite get away with that one on the podcast. But let's start with you, and let's roll it back. Before Storytelling Lab and teaching storytelling, how did you become a storyteller yourself?
Kind of completely by accident, but the story I'm about to tell you will prove how we're all storytellers. So I had been working a number of different jobs, and I had finally gotten into a job where I was doing PR for a theater, and it was a really good job, and I actually really liked it. But I didn't think, well, was this it? Was I just going to have this kind of traditional job the rest of my life? But I didn't know what I wanted to do. And at the time I was in therapy, sort of wrestling with this whole thing, like, what's my life going to be? What do I want to do with my life? Because I felt really, really stuck. I'd gone to university to be a teacher, and I really didn't want to be a teacher, but I didn't know what other things I could do. So I started taking classes kind of randomly. I would, just go to take, I had already graduated, but I went back to school. I was still, as I said, I was working, and I would take a class just to see if it would interest me. And then I took one class that sounded like it was going to be one thing, because back in those days, you had these big books you go through, and it lists all the courses at the school, and you pick it out, and they would give you and it never ended up to be, what it sounded like in the book. And so I took this class, which I thought had something to do with journalism. And I had previously, for a short time, been in radio. And the professor comes in that night, and I was sitting, so I would have been the last person that they talked to. So I went all around the room, and every single person in the class was a playwright. And they'd all been writing plays and wanted to be playwrights. I'd never even once had a fantasy of writing a play. So at the end of the class, I went up to the professor and I said, well, I'm not going to be here next week, but I want to tell you why, and I said, what I just said to you, I've never thought of it. It's not something I really wanted to do. And she convinced me to stay. Oh, what the hell, you're here anyway. And, being the people pleaser that I am, I ended up staying. And I was so upset because I remember driving home that night and it was snowing. I lived in Detroit at the time. And there was this huge storm and I'm driving in my little car and thinking I'm going to die on the road. Plus I had to write a scene. I didn't even know what is a scene. I had no idea. Never thought about writing a scene. Never thought what is a scene. And then I went home and I thought, well, I know about people. I mean, I live in the world. I know how people talk. I'll just make up something. And I did it. And that scene ended up to be the last scene in a play I wrote. And then every week I'd bring in my writing and everyone in the class really wanted to hear mine. And I could see that people were really engaged with it. And it was so much fun. I'd come home from work and I'd stay up all night writing. And then at the end, the professor wanted to meet with me. And she said, I think you should enter this in this playwriting competition. I had no idea there were playwriting competitions. So I entered it in this very prestigious playwriting competition and never gave it another thought. And then I ended up to be a finalist for it.
Wow.
So when that happened, I went, oh my God, maybe I'll be a writer. Well, I love doing this. Why can't I be a writer? And then I thought, well, I lived in Detroit. Theater wasn't a big thing. And frankly, I didn't feel as comfortable with theater as I did like with movies and television, which I grew up with. I thought, I'll work in movies and television. But it was really that naive, having no idea.
I do have an idea, believe it or not. Almost the exact same thing happened to me. And it was a life-changing moment for me in college. But now I'm starting to feel like maybe it's part of the racket that they're doing there. One, like, your teacher, we didn't know they got paid per student, so she just needed to keep you in the class to have like a class minimum, or they would have gotten canceled.
No, she was amazing. She was the most, she really was. She was the most inspirational person. And I feel like what I do is very similar to what she did, because I don't really believe that you can teach people to write. I mean, after a certain point, we're all literate. How to write. That's not the issue. The issue is, all your insecurity and all the blocks and the fear and all this other stuff that has nothing to do with writing.
So mine was the opposite. So in college, I already told you before we hit record that I was dyslexic and I failed a lot of English assignments when we had to hand write stuff and even typing on the computer and things, mostly because the only way they would take off points was for grammatical errors and spelling mistakes, right? Nobody grades the essay and says, oh, this is crap, or the insights are genius, so you just need an editor. I didn't know that until college, that there was such a thing. And spell check came out and a whole lot of other stuff. But I had this professor, Mr. Laughlin, shout out to Mr. Laughlin. But I wrote something in the class, and for the first time he said, like, you hear the music in the words. He's like, you're a very good writer, and I can teach you the rest of the stuff, the structure. It was in a journalism class as well.
Right.
And so I did an assignment and I won best sports article in the whole state of Missouri of all the college articles, Missouri College Media Association, I think. And I was like, holy crap, for the first time in my life at like 20 years old, I thought I'm a writer. I can write. That's like, it totally shifted my whole identity and self-concept in that moment.
Well, because the other thing about writing, it doesn't matter like if you're going to quote unquote be a writer, but understanding that you can do that transfers to so many other things other than writing a novel or writing a play. Yeah. It's a form of communication. It's the main way we communicate still. So if that's freed up, it frees up a lot of other things.
Now I want to ask you about, you mentioned you're just going to go get into TV and movies. And sometimes I was in radio too, by the way. So we're already connecting on multiple stories. But a lot of people ask me, how I got into radio. And it's not really that hard. I just tried and get, kind of figured my way out. You get a bad spot and you slightly, get better and better things. But I am curious with you how you got into, television and movies after that.
It was really hard. And I have to say, it was like one of those things that you're better off not knowing. Yeah. And so what I decided to do was, since I knew no one, this was, before you were way before you were born, way before the internet, like at the dawn of civilization. and I lived in Detroit. So I didn't know anyone. I couldn't ask anyone. There were no classes. I mean, now every school, you could have 7 people in the school, and there's a film school there, right? In university. There were none where I was. So I decided that I was going to start to explore it. And I went to New York for a couple months and tried to meet people and go to classes and try and do that. And then when I really figured out was if I was going to be in the TV and movie business, you had to be in LA. So it was the same thing. And you know what? I asked every single person I knew, literally. Now, at the time I was working in the theater, remind you, in Michigan, in Detroit, I asked every single person I know, do you know anyone in Hollywood? Do you know anyone in Hollywood? And I literally made a list, and I went to Hollywood and started calling at people and saying, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. And I was finalist in this competition, and I want to blah, 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 and I have a spec script. And I figured,
how'd that go for you?
6 months, and I'd be working. Well, 10 years later, I finally started, actually making a living. I mean, it's really hard. And the only reason to do it is because you really like the process. Because the other thing is, it's like anything else. Once it's out of your hands, you have no idea what's going to happen. You have zero control over it. I worked on something for 10 years, literally the first thing I ever sold. It took 10 years to get made. And then I was at the Toronto Film Festival with it, and it was premiering in New York the next day, and the next day was 9/11.
Crazy.
That sort of killed that. And plus, I can't wander around back then going, my movie's been ruined. Someone crashed it.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody's feeling bad for you on
No one's feeling bad for me. So, but it's a great lesson.
You can laugh about it now, but it's true, yeah.
You have no control over anything. So the only thing that you really have any control, and even that's very minimal, is over sort of yourself and your own process, for lack of a better word.
Well, I relate to that a lot, and I have a follow-up question for you after it got made, because I noticed this when I wrote my first book. It's called LinkedIn, The Sandler Way. It got picked up by Sandler, this international sales training company, and then by LinkedIn themselves. And so when you get like a Fortune 500 company involved, I would say by the time it actually went up on Amazon for sale, I probably wrote 70% of it. Is the same thing true with movies and TV, as you sort of like see, like you said, you lose control of it, you hand it over to somebody or sell it to somebody, which is even a best case scenario. Do you have to let go of it at that point and say it's not mine anymore?
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah. Once somebody buys it, it is.
What's that like?
You have nothing. Well, I think that you just, if you're going to do it, you just have to make peace with that. But there's a cool part of it too, because the first time I ever had anything made was a Lifetime movie. And it was based on this true story, and I'd gotten the rights, and I did this thing, and it took a really long time to sell it. And then it went, ABC bought it, and then they didn't, then all the people changed, and then somebody else, it was like that. It's always that. And then they don't want to make what somebody else bought. And so, okay. So when it finally got made, and they were shooting it in Vancouver, and I went to Vancouver, and the coolest thing was to see all the line of, trailers there. And I thought, I have employed, because I wrote that script, literally hundreds of people are now working and employed because of something that came out of my imagination. So I think that those are the things that you really end up having to hang on to, because all the rest goes away in 5 seconds. And then people will say to you, as soon as you've done something, it's like, well, did I see it? Well, what do you have next? And if you don't have something next, you already feel, so you really can't win. I mean, it really is about, and that's where the whole thing, while we're talking today about fun. I mean, the only reason to do something like writing or anything that's creative is because you're really enjoying it. That's the point of it. Then if you're really having fun, there's some possibility someone else will. But if it's just drudgery for you, and now you're giving it to me and you think I'm going to enjoy it, why is that? No.
Well, I think that's a really great point for having a career in something like this, or even just maintaining a hobby. Sometimes I always say people think writing finishing a book is the finish line, but it's not. It's really like the starting line of the whole promotion process and everything else, and editing and all kinds of stuff. It's like finishing, the last word in your first draft is not the finish line. No, that's the starting line.
It's really true. It is the starting line.
But I'm also wondering about the opposite. So what I always find fascinating with anybody that creates stuff is, how do you know when it's done? For you, is it just like a moment of satisfaction, or you could always make it better if you keep rewriting and keep drafting, but at some point you have to publish it. What's that like for you?
I don't like to ever, like, if I was clicking through on the channel and came across something of mine, there'd be no way I would watch it. I don't want to see it. It's really, really hard, because think about it this way. I believe that every day you do something, you're better than the day before, right? It's practice. It's not an unknown. So by the time something gets made and you're done with it, you've grown so much as a person that when you go back and look at it, you're not that person anymore. Right. And you go, oh, I could fix this. Oh, I should have done. So it's really, really hard. The place where it's really actually helped me is, when I went through a period, I don't know, maybe like 9-10 years ago, where I really felt like stuck. I felt like I was doing a new thing and I wanted to sort of break through, but I didn't know how. And I knew the way wasn't to keep writing. I knew I had to do something else. And I had read the book. I've probably sold 1 billion copies of this book. I'm always recommending it, which was called Just Kids by Patti Smith. And Patti Smith, I'm writing it down. It's her, it's a memoir about her friendship with Robert Mapplethorpe before they became famous, and they just met in New York as young artists. And when I was done reading it, I thought, I'm going to do something new. I'm going to do something I've never done. And I don't want to do something because I want to be good at it or have to be good. I just want to do it for the fun. So I went through all of these things, and I ended up picking art because I'd never taken an art class. I didn't expect to be good. I just wanted to do something that was so unlike anything else.
Yeah.
So I went to the art class, and it was really, really fun. And I decided, I was going to stay. I was going to keep taking art lessons, blah, 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 blah. So now I'm doing it. A year or so goes by. And my niece, who's a lawyer, said to me, if you set up an Etsy store, you could write off your art supplies and your classes. Okay. As soon as she said to me it's a tax write-off, I'm there. She said in the morning at 5 o'clock. By 5 o'clock, they had an Etsy site. So I have an Etsy site, and suddenly somebody buys something. And I think, oh my God, I just sold something. So now
you're a professional artist. Now you're getting paid to make this stuff. Yeah.
So now it's been like 9-10 years, and I have been selling things along the way. But again, I went through that period of trying to please people. Everybody wanted abstract. I'm not really an abstract person. I did some stuff, but I thought, you know what? I don't want to get back into that. I have to sell this. I'm going back to, I'm doing it for the fun of it. Yeah. So taking it back to the thing about when do you know you're done, I'll get to it. I find it easier with art to know when I'm done, only because I feel like I hit a brick wall.
Yeah, at some point you're going to make it worse if you add anything else to it.
I can't tell. Whereas writing, it's very hard to stop because there's it's a different kind of a thing. So when I hit a wall with art, it's really because I don't know even how to make it better. Whereas with writing, I've been doing it so long, I always see something I could do better.
Yeah, that's interesting. You hit on two things that come up a lot on this podcast. One is there's different ways to play. So if you're getting burnout on one, like, don't force it. Go do something else, and it'll recharge your energy. The other thing is sometimes when we're struggling with output, like we don't know what to write or we don't have a story to tell, that means we need better inputs. That, like, forcing yourself is not going to create better writing. You got to go live a little, find a story, let your brain work, do something crazy, and that will stir your creativity and your spirit again. Sometimes, especially in today's world, I think if you're in like a gray office cubicle with gray walls in front of a computer screen, it's going to be really hard to come up with some colorful piece of artwork out of nowhere, right?
No, absolutely. This is how I see it. And it sounds very woo woo, and I'm not the least bit of a woo woo person. But there's the part of you that's sort of the the intellectual part that's sitting here, right, and being professional and talking, and then there's still in you your unconscious and the natural, what I call your natural child. I mean, that is still there. It didn't go away from when you were 7. It just got buried, as you said, like all the bullshit. But so if you did something, if you created something, think about when you were a kid, you did a drawing, right? And you ran downstairs and you showed your mother and you were so proud. And you didn't say to her, well, is my color palette working? Well, what do you think of the composition? No, you just showed it, right? She put it in the refrigerator. You never thought about it. You didn't think about redoing it. Was it part of a series? You did it because it gave you pleasure. So I think that that's where it all has to start. That it's got to be something that you want to do. And then if you want to do it, you're going to have that kind of joy in doing it. And then hopefully if it's something that you want to share, then other people are going to relate to it too. So it's really got to stay there. That's why this appealed so much, me doing this with you today, because of the whole playful humans. The older you get, and as I say, I'm way older than you, it's amazing to me. You can't get people to do things. But that part of you is still there. And I love to play. I mean, you want to be able to tap into that. And I always think about it in this way, that kind of me that's sitting here goes away and Bonnie's unconscious takes over. And I really trust that. I mean, and I think everyone should trust that, because that's where the good stuff is.
Absolutely. The natural child is like who we are at our most free and
exactly.
playful. Yeah.
Exactly.
Really at our best.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't, if you were writing a novel, for example, and now you've written it in the spirit of your natural child, I'm not saying that that novel should go to a publisher. Obviously, you've got to get back in the headspace and rewrite it, and you need to have it proofread, and I mean, all those things. I'm not just, but it's like what we call in writing the vomit draft. First you just get it out there, and you're not worrying about, is the spelling right and the grammar right? Who cares? You got to see what it is before you begin to understand what it is you want to do.
Well, I do want to ask you about a few writing tips before we go too, but I've had so much fun. Before we do that, how did you meet Lily Tomlin?
How did I meet? My husband grew up with Lily.
Really? That's amazing.
And they had lost, I mean, literally from the time they were children. And one day we were living in Detroit. And as a joke, I said to she was on Saturday Night Live. And I said to my husband, somebody gave me a tip that Lily was going to say something about you on Saturday Night Live. I literally made this up. We watched Saturday Night Live, and she uses him in her bit.
You made that up?
I made it up. And she says, the thing that she said was so outrageous. She said, I can go out on the playground anytime I want, and Jimmy Lafferty will show me his penis. So we're sitting in bed watching
your husband.
Our phone starts ringing. Saturday Night Live? Okay. So anyway, as a result of that, he ended up reconnecting with her. And so then we've been friends ever since. So that's how.
That
isn't that hilarious?
Amazing. That is a killer story. I'm glad I asked now. Yeah. That was totally worth it. All right. Yeah. Now, bringing us back to storytelling and the storytelling lab. I would imagine there are people watching this that have a story to tell, or they've always wanted to be a writer, or they feel like they're not good at storytelling. What makes a storytelling class helpful for those people?
So what I do is mainly get rid of your blocks. Okay. And I do that. So what I started the class during COVID because teaching online at the university was so unpleasant. So I thought I won't keep teaching if I go down this route. So I thought, what would be fun? I mean, people need to have fun now, right? So we meet for 6 weeks, and every week we either people at home get an assignment. They either watch a movie or read something, and then there's a prompt that's personalized to them. I mean, to the theme of the story, and they personalize it themselves. But every week it's using a different part of your voice. So one time you may just tell a story just by telling it off the top of your head, a beginning, middle, and end. One time you might do a dialogue. I do a graphic with people. Like one of my students is now She'd never even seen a graphic novel. Now she has written and illustrated a graphic novel on grief that the Sunday Times of London did a huge magazine story on her. She'd never even seen a graphic novel before. So my whole thing is, you don't know what you can do. And if you think you can do something, you'll think, well, I could do that, but I can't do this. But you don't know. Because here's the other thing, and this is what I really learned from painting. When you like something, you do it. When you do it and keep doing it, you get better. It's not some magic. People always say to me, oh my God, you're gifted. You can do this, you can do. No, not gifted, sadly. Mozart, yeah. Me, no. Because it is that silly thing, practice makes perfect. So if you're liking it and you're doing it, you're going to get better at it.
I was laughing because I, in 8th grade, made a graphic novel book in the style of Douglas Adams. Do you know Douglas Adams and the Restaurant at the End of the Universe? It's kind of a teenage boy thing. He's an English writer, but it's very comedic and esoteric. It's amazing. He has 6 or 7 books in his trilogy now. He called it the Hitchhiker's Trilogy with 7 books, but and he's since passed away. But it is very like weird style, and so mine made absolutely no sense whatsoever and was a disastrous first step at a graphic novel. But it was fun. I'll never forget it. Unfortunately, I think my mom still has it. It is horrible. The worst thing probably I've ever made.
So funny.
So I love those things because I think that's actually where you build confidence. I've told the story too many times on here, but when I failed epically, that's when I go, well, I got that past me. That wasn't that bad, right? I've written something horrible. Now the only option is to write something better, you know?
You don't learn anything. You can't grow from stuff you already know. People, I honest to God, I don't even like people to give me compliments on my work because I feel like I don't need my ego. What I need to do is to find out how to make it better. And if you're not going to tell me, then how am I going to know? So you really, you've got people have so much more in them than they think. So that's really the point of the class, is to show you that you don't have to be a storyteller. You don't have to be a writer to be a storyteller. It makes you better at a dinner party. It makes you more interesting at work. It makes you more accessible as a person. It builds your confidence. So there's just no downside to it. And you've already got all the tools. You don't have to go out and learn anything, right? You have to buy paints. You don't have to buy ski equipment.
That's true. Free hobby, free play there.
You've got this whole thing inside of you.
Well, check it out at storytellinglab.online. Bonnie, do you want to play a game?
Sure.
All right, here we go. I feel like we can keep talking for quite a long time, but we'll let everybody else get back to work or play here in a second.
Good.
We surveyed 100 people. The top 5 answers are on the card here. If you get 2 out of 3 right, you win the game.
What do I get? A trip to somewhere wonderful?
You get a free 30-second commercial for the storytelling.
Okay, all right.
All right. We asked 100 people to name something people get on and get off of. What do you get on and get off of?
Okay, a bus.
Number 1 answer. There you go. Bing, bing, bing. 35 points for that. A horse, a train, a bike, or your feet.
I'd say your bike.
All right. Let's see. Question number 2 is, name something people do to prevent themselves from getting sick. What do you do to prevent illness?
Take vitamin C.
Number 1 answer, again, 45 points for vitamins. Eat or drink right, exercise, take medicine, or visit the doctor. And okay, hard one now. You've already won, but question number 3 is, name something people have been taught to hold correctly. What do you need to hold correctly?
To hold correctly. Boy, that one's a tough one. Yeah. A pen?
Oh, pen or pencil is number 3. You got it on there too.
Fork.
Silverware, the number 1 answer. A baby or a baby's head, number 2. Pencil, chopsticks, and scissors on the list. So pretty obvious once you think about it, but it was a weird question. Bonnie, you win. You did it. All right. You get a free 30-second commercial here for the Storytelling Lab. How can you help us, or how can we help you with the Storytelling Lab?
Okay. So Storytelling Lab is designed to help you change your life by freeing your voice, finding your inner child, and bringing back the fun. Because as you age, so the fun goes out of life for a lot of different reasons, but you have some control over that. And so I created this class in order to tap into that, to bring you back to your natural child, to give you the freedom to have fun at dinner parties, to write something if you want, to do a stand-up piece of poetry, whatever it is in your heart that you have sort of fantasized about. It's time to do it. There's never going to be a better time than now. It never gets easier.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show. Again, Bonnie Garvin, you can find her at storytellinglab.online. You can find Playful Humans at playfulhumans.com. There is a playfulness quiz there. You can determine which playful style fits you the best. Or we have a book coming out as well. I did some writing this summer, and it's any day now. So we want you to pay attention. Go check it out, or sign up for the email at playfulhumans.com, and send this episode to somebody that you think needs to hear it. We can all go play. Have fun, everybody.